I wanted to upload the introduction, but the web platform was down, and I couldn't upload it. But anyhow, I will upload it tonight, and you will have all information. Well, let's first thing first. Welcome to the course of Computer Graphics 2009. My name is Thimoty Barbieri, and I'm your professor for this course. This is actually, well, in the first semester is the first part of a whole course dealing about computer graphics and its applications. In the first semester you have computer graphics, which is basically theory and programming fundamentals of graphics. And in the second semester you have an additional ancillary course, which is called Computer Graphics Systems and Applications, where you see concrete application of computer graphics ranging from 3D modeling to virtual reality to medical imaging. Hello, take a seat. And to more traditional graphic arts related topics like printing, color management, color correction, color evaluation, printing techniques, digital printing, digital photography, and so on. But before going there, that is dealing with applications in the market and learning how to create application, this course, Computer Graphics, is a good start, whose goal is to give you all the foundational knowledge to understand how graphics as a science is treated, manipulated, processed, and described using a computer. So that's why it's called computer graphics. Well, so that's basically what I call the aims of the course. We will present theoretical basics that I've told you. We will learn building computer graphic programs, leveraging 3D techniques based on OpenGL. OpenGL is a very famous framework or API, application program interface, which allows you rather easily to create your own graphical or 3D programs. So we will cover that, and we will do hands-on example. By hands-on, I mean that we will be meeting in the lab, and you will be sitting in front of a strange object which is called a keyboard, and you will be required to type your own software and make it compile. So that's hands-on. In parallel, I will show you a few techniques to create algorithms, which are the most common algorithms which answer to the most common problems you can find in computer graphics. Like, for example, collision detection. May I close because it starts to get noisy. And shit. I parked outside. I hope my car will be... Shit. I was talking about collision detection is one common problem. That is, if you have two objects, for example, a car, in a game of racing, and your car is going against a building, and you want to determine if the car went against the building or not, then you need to solve a collision detection problem. That is, detect a collision between the car and the building. Or frustum culling, which is to determine if portions or regions, portion of regions of a scene can be culled, that is, taken away temporarily because it is not worth to perform calculation on them in a specific instant. So the idea is to optimize your calculation power, so you don't waste time in calculating colors and geometry. for parts of the images you're not currently displaying because your user is not visualizing them. So you cull them, performing a geometrical operation which is called frustum culling. The frustum is a solid figure which is actually the base of a pyramid. We will see that. What are your prerequisites? Well, for the part of building the programs, you are required to know a little bit of C, because we will write small programs using the C language. So we are actually not really intentioned in reviewing how to declare an array or how to make a for loop or how to make an if-then branch. You are required to review that part. About compiling, we will show you how to use the compiler and how to set up the compiler. We will use an Eclipse environment with an open source C compiler. That will allow you to work either on Linux or on your regular PC or on your Macintosh if you want, or if you have a Macintosh. The environment will be probably Eclipse. We will show you how to set up everything, and we will get you running, starting compiling a few samples. And then after a while, we will require you to fill in the gaps. That is, we will be explaining you some features of OpenGL, and you will be required to complete a few exercises, and you will step by step learn building your own graphical programs using C and OpenGL. What I expect you to take home from this course, you will take home basic skills for writing programs in which you have visualization tasks. So visualizing graphs or 3D objects or creating graphical, small video games or scientific visualization. You will at least know where to start. And you will gather all the main concepts that will be useful for you if you decide to go on deepening your knowledge of graphics with the course of computer graphics applications and systems, where we will be doing modeling and medical imaging and all the basic application of graphics. What are the main topics that we will be discussing? About the foundational principle, the main theory of computer graphics, we will be covering the theory about transformation and viewing. So we will cover a little bit of mathematics, which is used to represent how you transform the scene, that is, move objects, and how you represent projections. So how you represent your viewer, the person or the object which is viewing the 3D scene. We will also cover all the modeling and mathematics that is needed to model light and to perform shading. That is, to model the interaction between light and matter, which generates the color of the object. So we will learn how we can render colors in 3D according to an object position, an object material, an object color, the position of a light source, the nature of a light source, and so on. We will see this in theory, and we will review the maths that you need to review. So I expect you just to remember vaguely what is a vector and what is a matrix. If you remember that vaguely, all the rest I will review. I will show you, but the second lesson will be geometry for computer graphics, where we will be reviewing what is a scalar, what is a vector product, what is a scalar product, what is the geometrical meaning of a scalar product, and so on. It will be not very theoretical, so don't get alarmed. Everything will be explained to you with the point of view of immediately using these concepts for making computer graphics. So it will be very computer graphics oriented. You will see same thing that we see in theory, Oh my gosh. Let me see. Everything that we see in theory, you will see it on practice. So you will see how to program in OpenGL a transformation, projection, and interact with users. How to manage light and shades, and how to draw curves and surfaces using NURBS, non-uniform rational B-splines, which is a very handy technique to quickly model surfaces without knowing in advance their polynomial, which actually could lead an untreatable problem, because it is very hard to find the correct polynomial for the shape, for the curve you want to draw. But the NURBS technique solves this problem. We will see why, and we will see how to exploit it in OpenGL. Then we will see a little bit of some more evolved algorithms. Frost and culling, as I have told you. What is Frost and culling? How can you create a Frost and culling algorithm to improve the performance of your software? Clipping, how to calculate bounding volumes, which is the optimal volume on which to base all the rest of calculations, like, for example, collision detection, and other polygonal techniques, that is, techniques that are used to manipulate polygons, which actually form the 3D shapes. You're probably aware of that. We will deal into this if we have time. We will see how the course progresses. Contacts. Well, these are actually my old contacts. My new contacts are in the new slides that I will upload as soon as I can on the web page. But what holds, is still valid, is the email. So you can write to my email over here. You can see my web page if you are for any reason interested in it. So that's the web page. But the most important way to keep in touch is my MSN contact. So if you have any question, either during the course or for making the project, or you just want to invite me out for a beer, which is not bad, you can add my contact to your messenger. This is it. And anytime you have a question, if you see my icon, which is free for chat, then just drop by a line and I will answer you. That's the quickest way to keep in touch. Because I receive a lot of emails every day, so basically my strategy now is putting a nice flag beside the email. The flag means I have to do this later, but then I have a backlog of 60 or 70 mails every week, so it takes some time until I get to your email with your flag. So if you need an immediate reply, it is worth to try with a very quick question by a messenger, and you will get a very quick answer. The assistant is not anymore Damiano Triglione. From this year onwards, hopefully, we have I have another assistant. Actually, it's a girl. She's called Raffaella Canu. She has been a student of mine a few years ago, and she graduated with a very interesting computer graphics project. It's a virtual and augmented reality application. She did very well, and hopefully she will bring the subject of computer programming and OpenGL, which she knows very well because she's used it for her thesis, to your attention, and successfully. So she will present herself and give you her contacts. This is the calendar. Actually, you see the dates are 2007 and 2008. Of course, this is not our calendar for this year, because our calendar will be 2008 and 2009. But the order, more or less, of the topics is the same, so we'll cover it briefly. Just take care that these are not the dates. To get the correct dates, download the calendar. Well, actually, it's already online, so this is online is an HTML format, so I can take it from here. Do you know the platform? Yes? So you know how to get here. Yes? You get here from... You log in on Course Online, then you choose the course Computer Graphics, Thimoty Barbieri. Hey, that's me. You click on it, and you should be automatically subscribed if you put the course in your study plan. But if there is any problem about granting the rights to get to the main page, you know that you can just use the function request permission to enter the course. This function will send me a message. The student, I don't know, Nicole Kidman, wants to join the course, and I, of course, give her permission to join the course. And that's it. If you don't have automatically the permission, you have this button to push, and it takes a little bit of time because I have to reread the message and go into the platform and push another button to give you the permission. But if everything goes well, it should be automatic. And you get here the page of the course. We will go through it briefly. The page of the course is very interesting because anything urgent that I have to tell you, I write it here in red, urgent, read it or die. Well, actually, this is not very interesting. It's a proposal for a project about creating virtual bones for a team of surgeons. But I will show it to you when we arrive at the end of the course. Most interesting thing in the page is that you have a calendar of the course. Any modification on times, dates, and rooms will be put here and highlighted in red. So if you see something in red and bold, it means that I have changed it. So just keep an eye on the calendar from time to time. And you have very friendly icons here. You know, you can click here and you can get all your material. The course is designed and prepared in such a way that you need only the material that it is available here. So you just download everything, you study everything which you find here, you are ready to get 30. Okay? So provided you have downloaded everything, studied everything, and understood everything, that is 30 for your mark. If you start saying, oh, but this maybe I don't study, this I don't download, then it's already 25. Okay? So you need to download everything and to study everything to get 30. If you start making your own choices, then your degree will go down. The more choices you do, the less is your mark. So the agreement is, I will never ask you anything which is not here. But in turn, you are bound to know everything which is published on this site, on this material. As you can see, the course is actually rather old. I am teaching this course since 2003, I believe. So it's already the 6th year that this course is running. So the material is very well used. So it has been amended. There were mistakes. Probably there are still mistakes. So if you find them, please tell me and we will correct them. So you shouldn't have any problem with that. Actually, I have cases of students which came just the first lesson, then they didn't came anymore, just studied the slides, came to the exam, they knew perfectly the slides, exam given 30, okay, bye-bye, thank you very much. So if you're very careful and study very careful, the material is rather good, because it was proven on the field that even students that didn't follow the course could get successfully a good mark. Which is not an encouragement. I'm not telling you don't come anymore because you can stay home and study, because actually the topics are not easy to get. It's a very hard mix between vector mathematics, computer programming, and geometrical thinking. So you need a geometric brain, that is the talent to visualize the geometrical problem in your brain. Okay? Because we will be talking about, yes, but a sphere with a cube which is touching at just one corner, but with the other corner against the other, and we will be describing it and trying to draw it. But if you're not able to visualize it in your mind, you will never understand the problem. So first of all, you need a geometrical brain. Second of all, I will be asking you to program this thing, to make an application which solves the problem. So you need programming skills. And third of all, in order to solve these programming skills, you need the mathematics to support you. So you need to understand a little bit about vectors and matrices, and if it is best to perform a scalar vector or a scalar product or a vector product, which is something I will explain to you, so we will review it together. So it's not easy. It's not impossible to understand it but in your own. There are also several books that can help you and understand better if the slides are not enough. But of course, listening to a live explanation is still something that helps you very much when you have to study the material afterwards. So it's your choice. It depends on your experience and on your method of study. If you find that you study more easily after you have heard a live explanation from the teacher, which is the purpose of the lectures, by the way, otherwise we could just do a bunch of e-learning sessions, and that would be it, then it's the way for you to go. If you feel confident that you can prepare by yourself by just using material, then please do so. I do not require your attendance if you feel that it does not help you. Okay? Contents, as you see, we will be alternating lectures and practice. Lectures is in yellow, practice is in green. As you see, practice is given by Miss Cano. We will start basic principle, which is today's lectures. I will give you, after this course introduction, which is here, I will give you a few introduction of the concepts we will be seeing in computer graphics. Then next week you will meet Raffaella, and she will introduce you to OpenGL. You will be in the lab, and she will explain you how to install Eclipse, how to install the compiler. You will be compiling and running your first C project and OpenGL project, so we will be a little bit of hands-on practice setting up the environment to work for the next sessions. I think that if you have a portable PC, you are encouraged to bring your portable and set up your environment on your portable with her assistance. So you have already a working environment which you can use for your practicing when you are in the privacy of your room, of your house. So you can fiddle around, do your experiments without nobody around you noticing that you are quite well, unexperienced. So my encouragement is if you feel that you have well, it's not a surprise to find some of you that actually never had the opportunity to compile a C program or to make a real working example of a program. Take the opportunity of this course to really make practice. So don't take the excuse, but I never did it myself and I'm not going to start now. That would be wrong. We have every intention to help you gaining field experience. So take this opportunity of our availability, Raffaella's availability to help you. So even if you never did it, put into your head that you are supposed to have an experience on these kind of things because you are going to be a computer engineer. So face the facts and start now if you didn't start yet. The second lectural theory that we will be doing, you see, it's geometry for computer graphics. I decided to introduce that lecture because I realized that many of you didn't have actually the knowledge at the geometrical level to face the problems of computer graphics. Or better still, well, that's a different matter. Many of you had this knowledge, but it was handled too theoretically, so you weren't sure what was the meaning of that. So I decided to devote a complete lecture in reviewing the most important concepts of geometry, but with the practical point of view of how we will be using it for the course. So we will devote this lecture reviewing matrices and vectors and way to use vectors. And we will use this lecture as a base for all the other discussion that we will do in the following lectures. We will see transformation and viewing theory, and immediately the week after, you will see it in practice. So how you program these things that will be discussed, what we have been discussing in theory, you will see it in the lab together with Raffaella. Then we will go on with theory about projection coordinates and how to calculate bounding volumes. You will go on next week with Raffaella. Then we will talk about light and colors. How do we represent light? How do we calculate color in theory? And you will see it, you see in the following weeks with OpenGL as well. Then we will have a lecture about curves, and then a lecture about algorithms, a little bit more complex, how to make collision detection, how to make techniques, etc., etc. And some more discussion about rendering algorithms, which are called ray trace and radiosity, which are two techniques to create photorealistic results from synthetic images. And usually in the last lesson, which is in January, I devote a few minutes to show you some examples of questions which are given at the exam. So we can evaluate together if you're ready for the exam or if you need some more study. Here you have the Red Book. The Red Book is an entire book which is very useful for the students which are beginning their experience programming OpenGL. So basically everything which Raffaella will explain you and will show you in the lab is covered as a complete book here. This is a complete PDF you can use it as a book. So you can download it for free. You can even purchase a printed version. You can find it in the library. They sell it for a few bucks. I think 30 bucks, 35 bucks. Well, euros. But if you don't want to buy the printed version, you can just download for free the digital version. That's so fine. Here you have some examples of exams. So you can download it to prepare yourself on examples of previous exams of some years ago, 2006. And exercises, other examples, they're all here. So you can use this material to practice for the exam. Okay, as I told you, you can just download the slides and the material from the web, from the course online page. That's enough for preparing yourself. But if you feel that you need more in-depth explanations, or you're, I don't know why, but well, crazy people is everywhere, or you need more because you're very interested, so you need more, you want more, then you can buy the books. These are the main books that can give you the best reference for what I'm explaining in the course. So the two main textbooks are Edward Angel, Interactive Computer Graphics with OpenGL. You can find it available also for rent here in the library at Como. I think we have a couple of copies. And I think that there is, how to say, demo version circulating of this book around. You can ask the students of previous courses. And this is the red book, but actually you can download it for free, or you have a link here in HTML format. I don't know if these links are still working, but you can just Google it, and you will find it. If you want still more information, then you have the Folly Van Damme, Computer Graphics Principle and Practice. That is also nicknamed among the experts the Bible, meaning that it's a rather thick book, and it has a whole wealth of information, much more than we are seeing in the course. So it's really a book to have if you are specifically interested in the course for some reason, or in the subject for some reason. So if you consider yourself an expert or a practitioner of the matter, then the Folly Van Damme is something that should be on your shelf. A good help on the mathematics, if you're a little bit lost on the slides and you feel that the slides are not enough, you have a more in-depth description of all the mathematics in this book, which is Mathematics for 3D Game Programming and Computer Graphics by River Media, author Eric Langio. Actually, the course is a short version of this book. So if you find the book, you will find everything which is treated in the course, but explained in a bit more, how to say, expanded fashion. I repeat, you don't need to buy these books. The slides are enough. The books could be useful if, for example, you didn't attend the lecture, and you read the slides and you realize suddenly in desperation that you don't understand a single line from the slides, so you need more help. So the books could help you because they are a little bit more expanded on the subject. Okay. The exam. The exam is written. There is actually no exception on this rule, except, I don't know, a couple of times I did an oral exam, but just because the student was actually already 55. He had 55 years, already the 20th time he tried the exam. Already he had a wife and 2 children waiting for him at home. So the only way to get rid of him was making an oral exam. So this is the only kind of exception. But normally you are required to do a written exam, come to the exam prepared because you have the material, you follow the course, everything is rather clear, so you are actually required to study and to come to the exam prepared. So if you fulfill these requirements, you sit your sweet bottom on the chair for a couple of hours. You find 4 big questions, and you're required to score more than 18 on the written exam. If you score more than 18, well, 18 or more than 18, you pass the exam. If you score less than 18, you didn't pass the exam, you can try again at the next board. There is no penalty. I mean, if you try the exam and you fail it, you are free to subscribe as many times you want. So there is no exam bookkeeping. Okay? Everything is very simple. You try, and you keep trying until you get a mark that satisfies you. What are the topics? The first topic is an exercise about OpenGL programming. Of course, since it's written on paper, I don't require you to write a full program. It's just a question about how do you more or less, what will you more or less think it will be necessary to do to write a program that does this, this, and this. And you more or less try to write some sketchy code or a brief description of how the program could be built. One topic is about 3D geometry with calculations. So for example, the text gives you, I don't know, a sphere which moves, gives you a velocity vector, the radius of the sphere, and asks you to calculate, I don't know, the point of contact against a plane, something like that. It is some basic 3D geometry problem, which is common in 3D graphics. Here, there are live calculations to be done. So you will be required to make 2 by 2 plus 3 divided by 4, and actually to get that calculation done correctly. So I'm expecting you that 2 by 2 plus 2, 2 by 2, 4, plus 2, 6, and you have to write 6. Okay? So if you write 5, that's a mistake, calculation wrong. You can bring a pocket calculator to do that. So if you're, mobile calculator, what is that? In the mobile phone. If you have a mobile phone that does vector calculus, then okay. It's better if you bring, usually all we engineers, I mean in my time, almost immediately I bought a pocket calculator which did for me vector calculus, matrix multiplications. If you do have those, then good for you, because you can multiply matrices and vectors without fear of having it wrong. The only problem is that those kind of tools actually do not perform symbolic calculation. So if you start dividing and you have 2 with the square of 2, or 2 over square of 2, you don't handle that kind of calculations. You handle everything with decimals, so you lose in precision. And in the end, if you do everything with your pocket calculator, your result actually is skirting away, is deviating away from the real result because of the approximation of the decimals. So actually, if you do it, well, the exercise is structured in such a way that if you do it by hand, with your mind, you are very precise because you're carrying around all in a symbolic way, and you don't have any error due to the decimal or decimal rotundation or truncation. But we will talk about this when we will start doing together a few sketchy calculations for this kind of problems. Then the last 2 questions are 2 questions about theory of computer graphics. So for example, describe how light is modeled in computer graphics, what are the possible interaction between light and matters, what does it mean that the material is diffusive or specular, and how computer graphics softwares handle the problem of specular materials, what are the results of such an algorithm. So just tell me with your own words what you have understood of these specific problems of computer graphics. Each one of these topics is subdivided in 4 subtopics, A, B, C, D. So even if you don't know how to answer in full to the question, you can start answering the first little bit, and then the second little bit, and then the third little bit. So even if you don't know everything, but you know a little bit of it, maybe the beginning, you still get some points. So the idea is start answering everywhere you can to collect points. Okay? So it's a very fine-tuned system, so you get a mark which is very precise. The full score is 32. 32 is 30 with lode, so it's 30 with a big kiss on your forehead. And as soon as you don't answer well to A, B, C, or D of one of the topics, you lose 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points. You can go on losing until you go under 18. Under 18 is, I'm sorry, try again. Okay, so the rules are very clear, and the grading method is very scientific. So I actually never quarreled about a mark in computer graphics, because I can prove with stony evidence that that is your mark. Which is good for me and good for you. I mean, it's just the way to go. You have a related course which is called Laboratory of Computer Graphics. Laboratory of Computer Graphics is an additional 2.5 credits in which you are not required to attend any lecture. It's just you and your group working at home in the way you feel best suited for your needs, in which you make a project in group of about 80 hours, which is worth about 80 hours each. So if it's a group of 3 people, it's about 240 hours work. And this project is something which is related either to the topics of computer graphics, which is this course, or to the topics of computer graphics application, which is the course in the 2nd semester. So you can choose what to do. I have a few examples of projects that have been done in connection to this course. I'm going to show them to you. The only problem is that I'm sure that these work well on my PC, but my PC, I couldn't use it to project on the projector because I discovered that my video board has a problem, has a signal problem. So what I will do is try to run them on the PC over here, but I'm not sure that they will work. So we will see what happens. I will show this to you later today, because while I am showing them, I will be also starting describing the basic principles of computer graphics. So I will be talking about, well, theory, but I will show you immediately how this theory is put in practice in the projects. So example of projects, a group of students made a 3D model of an old church, Santa Tecla, which is actually the very old building site, the church, which is underneath the foundation of the Duomo of Milan. I don't know if you have ever had a chance to tour inside the Duomo of Milan. You know that you can go underneath and visit another church, which was the earlier church over which the Duomo was built. What this group did is that they went to the museum and gathered all the floor plans and used the floor plans and their photographs to build a 3D model reconstructing the church. Then another group actually made a model of the inside, indoor of the Duomo itself using a technique which is called VRML, Virtual Reality Modeling Language, which allows you to visit the model in 3D from a web page. So it actually was a website devoted to the Duomo of Milano, which gave you the possibility to visit virtually the Duomo of Milano, moving inside it. Another group used a virtual glove, which is a glove that you wear and tracks the position of your hands and your fingers, to make a software which allowed you to pick objects in 3D and move them around in 3D using the glove that we have in the laboratory. In the laboratory, we also have a force feedback system, which is a robotic arm, which is connected to a 3D scene, and it gives you the impression of touching the 3D things. Really, you can feel their shape, and if they are heavy or light, or it's a how can you say that? It's feeling system, touching and feeling system, a haptic system. So some people did some work with that system that we have at the lab. Other people made tutorials that you will see during the course, tutorials that explain you how to program in OpenGL to do some things, like calculate a bounding box. So some of the examples that you will see and you will learn on, it's actually samples that were made by students which came before you. Okay, what is the schedule? This is my schedule. I propose starting at 1:45. This was written on my web page, so I don't know if you were aware of it, but I cannot start before 1:45 because in the morning I have another lecture which is in Pavia, so I need my teleporting machine is broken, and since I cannot teleport anymore, I need actually an hour and a half to get here, so I cannot start before 1:45. Since I'm coming by car, sometimes it can happen that there is a storm or Godzilla trampling on the highway or a huge traffic jam or whatever it is, and I might incur in some snag. If you see that I'm, usually if I'm stuck in the middle of the traffic, I phone to the Servizi Generali, and I ask them to come and say, look, I'm stuck here, over here, over here. My estimated time of arrival is, I don't know, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or 3 hours to go home. But usually I manage to come here with any weather condition. So just wait a little bit. I'm usually not late, but it happened a couple of times that I was late. So just to explain you why am I late. Not because I'm lazy, but because it's very difficult for me to teleport from one place to the other of the region. Usually I propose one single break of 600 seconds in between. That usually is enough. It depends if you are very bored or if you're very tired, or I am very tired, that can vary. And usually I should finish at 5 or 5:15, something like that. If you have other ideas or other needs, we are free to discuss them now and make different arrangements. Okay. I think I told you everything you need to know about the course. I can just show you very briefly how is the written text of the exam, an example, so you know what is the death you're going to die of. So this has never changed in almost 8 years. We have a few rules, and you have 3 hours or 2.5 if it is simple. Yes, you can answer, well, the text is in English. The test is in English just because I don't have time to write 3 versions of the same text. So it is in English because everybody is supposed to understand English. You are not forced to reply in English. If you are Italian and you feel better writing in Italian, write in Italian. If you are Russian or Ukrainian or whatever in the СНГ, you can write in Russian. Это не проблем. Прекрасно я понимаю. Просто почерк, пожалуйста. Почерк хороший. Надо. Иначе я не могу читать хорошо. Otherwise, if you're not in these 2 groups, you can write in English. For Chinese students, I'm trying to get to the level of allowing you to reply in Chinese, but I'm not there yet. I need a Chinese girlfriend for that, to get some motivation. No, I'm just kidding. This is how the exam looks like. So you see, this is the first question, second question, third question, fourth question. The question has a little bit of introduction to prepare you to the sub-question. For example, Bezier curves and splines are of fundamental importance in computer graphics. So it just tells you, this question is about Bezier curves and splines. First little bit of the question, define a Bezier curve. Write its general mathematical representation. Explain how they work, explaining the behavior of the Bernstein polynomials. So if you know this, well, probably you don't know anything about that because you didn't take the course, okay? This is something you're supposed to know at the end of the course, not at the beginning. So don't get scared, oh my God, what is he talking about? Okay, it's normal that you don't know it. You will know it after the course, okay? But I assure you, if you studied it, this is a very simple question. So say, okay, this I know. 2 points. Then next step, show why in a Bezier CU always passes in P0 and Pn being the first and the last control point. Oh yes, I know. 4 points. You have to go like this. Okay? You crawl your way through the exam until you have answered very well to all the points. If you have answered very well to all the points, that's 30 with a kiss on your forehead. If you don't want the kiss, just write I don't want the kiss because I don't like it and I will give you lode instead of the piece. Okay, it's up to you. Okay, so that's it. I think it's fair. You are probably aware by now that to get a good mark with such a system, the only way is to study well. There is no other way. You cannot fool this exam around. I mean, it's not a project with an oral exam in which you can do Spider-Man on a glass wall, and you can. There is no Spider-Man in here. It's very, to the point. It's a very technical exam. But I assure you, I promise you that at the end of this exam, you will have a very clear knowledge of what the fuck, scalar product, vector product, matrices, what do you need for? You will know it crystal clear. And you will use it not only for computer graphics, but for any other complex problem that as an engineer you will be bound to face. So I promise you that I will teach you how to use it in practice. So that will be a nice effect. Okay. Any question? Are you comfortable with my way of talking? Is everybody understanding fine? Is my English fine for everybody? Okay, am I too quick or too slow? Or am I using words that you don't know? Okay, fine. Don't be shy. We're not very many, so we can afford the time of you raising your hand and saying very openly, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said, or I'm sorry, I don't agree, or I'm sorry, could you repeat this in a different way? This is completely feasible, this is your right, and it is not only your right, but it's also my pleasure. So do it. You are also doing a service to the person which is near you, because if you didn't understand, then there is an 80% chance that the person right next to you didn't understand as well. So just ask and do everybody else a favor, because if you didn't understand, probably nobody else have understood it. Okay? You are not the only asshole that didn't understand it. Okay. No questions? Everything is clear. Good. Yes, I have a style of presenting the lecture which is, how to say, a little bit unorthodox, which is sometimes I say something kind of strange. I think you already noticed. Why am I doing this? Not because I'm completely crazy, but because we are doing, I'm forced to make a 4 hours in a row schedule. We are talking in a foreign language. Well, English is not my native language. It's a language with which I work with, which means I passively use it, but I'm not native in it, so it's heavy for me, and probably it's heavy for you also, because I don't know if there is any native English speaker here. Any native speaker here in English? No Indians, for example, from India? No? So it's heavy for you, and it's heavy for me. And the subject as well is, we are not talking about nice women or fast cars. So it's something which is rather heavy. Well, interesting, but heavy. So the only way to survive at the end of the day is, well, in my opinion, is to present it, of course, seriously, scientifically, but also in a way which is engaging. Which means a style which is not reading every line on the slides. That's stupid, because you have the slides, so you can read for yourself. So I will try to present them, with a different point of view. I understand that, I received some criticism about that in the past years for some of you. I am open to that as well. I just wanted to explain you why I am behaving in this way, because I found out that in the long run, this is productive. Everybody is keeping a level of attention which is higher than just ranting away for 4 hours reading the slides. And this also encourages you in build a relationship with me, which encourages you a little bit better in making questions, and well, being a little bit more constructive, which is in the long run, well, the real reason why you are here. Not to get a mark, but well, to learn your way and to learn some tools and techniques that you might use later in your working life. That's okay. Enough for preaching. I think that maybe this is a good time to take a short break. And after a short break, I will present you some of the works. And while I'm presenting the works, I will immediately start talking about basic principles of computer graphics. So see you in 600 seconds.
Okay, welcome back after a break. Do you mind if I close? Because I'm actually feeling cold. Okay, welcome back. Let's start with the first lecture, which is called Fundamentals of Computer Graphics. Every lecture has, as a first slide, a slide which is called Topics. So when you're studying one of these lectures, at the end, go back at the first slide and ask yourself, did I understand all the points in the topics? If the answer is no, go back to what you're missing and study it, okay? So use always, for each set of slides, the first slide to understand what are the main topics that you shouldn't have missed. If there is something in these topics that you are not very sure of, it means that you need to go back and study it, because this is what I require you to know and to take home from this lecture. So we will talking about what's the difference between modeling and rendering. So today actually is very basic, so I expect that probably you know already some of this stuff because of your experience or your passion or your interest in computer graphics. But just to lay the groundwork smooth for everybody, I will be covering all the basic terminology and the basic way of reasoning, so everybody is up to the par. So what's modeling and rendering? What's the graphics pipeline? What are the main elements of a scene? What's the scene? What are the types of projection that you have out there? How do we model? What's the approach we use to model light and matter and the interaction between the two? And consequently, shading. Shading is a strategy, an algorithm to compute, decide, or calculate color as a result of the interaction between light, matter, and the position of light sources, objects, and so on. Well, there's an interesting definition of what's computer graphics. Computer graphics is all the technologies, tools, well, the science, which deals with the synthesis of images. What does it mean, synthesis? That we create images starting from data. This is, if you want, the dual of another branch of computer science, which is called computer vision. In computer vision, we extract data from an existing image. For example, computer vision is used with success for robots, which have a camera. They take a shot of the surrounding environment from the camera, and they understand, for example, that there's a box laying on the floor. And they can make out the position of the box, and they can move and take the box. Or, for example, you have a computer vision application for a surveillance system, which can detect motion from an image, so they can see if there is a man walking at a certain moment and sound an alarm, for example. So that's all application of computer vision, that is analyzing an image to gather from it data. We do not analyze images, we synthesize images. That is, we create images starting from data. This data can be of various sources, can take several shapes. For example, we have a grid of bits, and we represent it as a bitmap image, like we do in photographs. We can see pictures, photographs. Every photograph is composed of several tiny colored pixels, and there are procedures and techniques in computer graphics that take the information pixel by pixel and visualize it as a colored image using several techniques. We will talk about that in much detail and in very much detail in the second semester when we will be doing systems and application, digital photography, and color treatment, and digital treatment, and so forth and so forth. Another way is that actually this data is geometric data, vector data. So it is actually a set of coordinates, of points, which have different meanings, of vectors, which have different meanings. And starting from this geometrical collection of points that we will be calling vertices, which we will see they form polygons, which together form meshes, which together form a scene. All this together is actually can be reduced to a very long list of 3D coordinates in a 3D space, which is basically vectors. And treating them geometrically as vectors, computer graphics give you methodologies, technologies to visualize these vectors as a 3D scene. You can use this technology to do anything you like, from visualizing, I don't know, your heart when you do a diagnosis through image, because you do an exam using a computer-aided tomography, or just seeing a movie, Toy Story 2, or whatever else movie in 3D, so enjoy just 3D animation, or computer gaming, shooting to the bad guys, hiding yourself behind the corners, exploring fantasy lands, all rendered in 3D. So you have several applications. Simulation, like for example, people, military trains, there are tank simulators or jet fighter simulators, so they can learn flying a jet without actually going on one and risking their lives because it's the first time, so they do 3D simulation for that. So it's about synthesis. About synthesis, but not only synthesis, because we can consider ranging inside the field of computer graphics something that actually, in the last 5 years evolved so much to deserve a label by itself, a label which is computer-human interaction. And I'm talking about all interfaces. That is, all the way that interface the user with the virtual environment and the 3D environment. So in computer graphics, you have also to consider all the way to handle joysticks, trackballs, pointer systems, virtual gloves, head tracking systems. You know what head tracking systems are? They're some kind of helmets. And when you move your head, there is a sensor that detects that you are moving your head. And this gives the effect to move the scene in front of you. I think that if you YouTube, YouTube, it's like Google, but for videos. Or Google Video, that's the same thing. With YouTube, you search head-mounted display, HMD. HMD or head-mounted display. You can see a lighting example, I think. These are all advanced human-computer interfaces that, experts in computer graphics are involved with if they are making specific projects. They're interesting. I usually choose to start my discussion of the foundation of computer graphics from our old friend, the CRT. Do you know what the CRT is? CRT or cathodic ray tube. Even if this is becoming, I was saying, old friend. I mean, it's getting an oldie because we are seeing less and less of CRTs around there. So this technology is kind of getting obsolete. But still, this lays at the foundation, at the base of computer graphics. So this is why we're still talking about it. What is the, well, very roughly the working principle of a CRT imaging tube? You have an electron gun mounted at the bottom of the CRT. This electron gun fires a ray of electrons. This ray goes to a screen in the front. The screen in the front is covered with specific elements which are called phosphors. These phosphors have the ability to emit light of a specific color when they get excited by a specific quantity of energy. So in short, when the beam from the electron gun hits a phosphor, the phosphor starts glowing. Which color? It depends from the material with which the phosphor is built. At the very beginning, I don't know, well, not that I am very old, but the technology is evolving rather quickly. So when I started with computers, I had amber phosphors or green phosphors. I think you can still see around some imaging system with green phosphors. So those were phosphors who could emit green light or amber light. Today, actually, in CRTs, we have 3 layers of phosphors. One layer which emits red light, one layer which emits green light, and one layer which emits blue light. And we will see that thanks to a physical property of our eyes, which is called the tristimula property, we can mix different intensity of these primary colors, red, green, and blue, to have the effect of seeing a different color. So, for example, if I'm seeing together the right intensity of green and blue, I get a perception of yellow. So the intensity of this color mix, the intensity of these primary colors mix, to give me all the other gamut of possible colors. This is actually the principle with which your televisor works, or used to work. If you still have a CRT-based televisor, but probably you still have, go near it, put your nose on the screen, well, not too much because it damages a little bit your sight, it might give you a headache, but you will be able to see that in a Samondiele, in fact, you have 3 arrays of phosphor which are able to represent just 3 different colors, red, green, and blue, in 3 different intensities. And it is just the fact that you can modulate this intensity that gives you all the range of different colors. As long as you take away your nose from the screen of the televisor and go and put some distance between your nose and the screen, you will realize how these 3 colors, red, green, and blue, actually mix together to form all the remaining gamut of colors. That's the main first secret of computer graphics, and it's called the 3 stimula principle, or the 3 stimula approach. All the colors are formed by combining together 3 stimula of the primary colors. Also, the second fact is that these colors are combined by putting together small elements. So the pixels are very small. They are putting one next to the other. And since they are small, and since they are disposed one next to the other, when I'm putting some distance between me and the screen, my eyes start combining, start merging. So the principle is I can subdivide the image in a grid, which can be fine enough. The finest the grid, the better the result, the finest the result I get. And this grid can be composed at least of 3 different layers. 1 layer for each primary contributor to the color. So, for example, 1 layer of red, 1 layer of green, and 1 layer of blue. This is the principle with which our old televisor set works, and this is also the principle with which our video board in our PC work. They put all the data in a region of memory which is called a frame buffer. The frame buffer, what is it? It's a matrix of memory, so basically a grid with cells. And every cell of the grid has this information, on or off. On means put a light on that square of the grid. Off means don't put a light on that square of the grid. Well, good. On and off is actually a bit limiting, because it would mean that my televisor would be able just to make 2 colors, right? White or black. So it actually, the frame buffer works a little bit finer than that. And for every grid, you can imagine it 24-bit deep. In fact, probably you have heard that your video board has a bit depth of 24 bits. Did you ever hear that? What does it mean? It means that every location of the grid of the frame buffer as a regional memory is actually able to store 24 bits. 24 bits means, divided by 3, which is the number of primary colors, 8 bits for modeling the level of intensity of red, 8 bits for modeling the level of intensity of green, 8 bits for modeling the level of intensity of blue. So, do you remember your binary? It means that you have 2 to the power of 8 possible level of intensity of red, of green, and of blue. So actually your video board is able to control the CRT in order to energize the phosphor only at 256 different positions of energy. So there is a quantization of energy level that you can give to each phosphor, which in turn means that each phosphor roughly can give you only 256 different ways, well, how can we say, volumes of light, intensity of light, from completely off to maximum intensity and the in-between 254 levels. By combining the 256 levels for the red, for the green, and for the blue, you can get millions of colors, which is 256 to the cube possible combinations. Right? Are you with me? This probably you already know. What the frame buffer does is actually just memorizing 24-bit for every cell of memory of the video memory. So if you want to display at the same time 124 by 768 cells of color, let's call them pixels, that's their name, then it means that you need how many bits? You need 124 multiplied by 768 multiplied by 24 bits. Everything actually comes very simple if we keep thinking at our old friend, the CRT. Today, of course, we have different technologies, like, for example, liquid crystal display, which is actually based on a completely different physical principle. So it's just a set of mirrors that are oriented in a different way. So it mirrors these crystals, are mirroring the lights, and they can be oriented with different orientation thanks to electricity. So the video board, well, the monitor is actually running electricity through the crystal to orient them in a different way. By orienting them in a different way, they reflect red or green or blue. And in the end, they create red pixels, green pixels, and blue pixels. Another exciting technology which is actually coming through is the OLEDs. Have you ever heard about them? That's organic light emitter devices. The very cool things about them is, well, they are molecules. They are organic molecules which have the property of emitting light when when energy or electricity is applied to them. So it's, well, it's an organic molecule which is light emitting when there is electricity applied. The fact that it is an organic molecule allows you to think some nice application, like for example, you can spray, like in an ink, these molecules on any possible surface, for example, on textiles. You have probably seen prototypes of foldable monitors. Did you ever see? There are some prototypes of monitors. They are actually like a sheet of paper, like this, and you can even say, oh, this is my monitor, but I want to take it home. Okay. This is my monitor. I put it in the pocket, and then I go back home and put it back. So we will have, I don't know, organic newspapers with a wireless connection. So we will not be needing paper anymore. We will just download the newspaper from our UMTS connection. And the organic display will just display on my, well, OLED monitor. And every day, without using paper and trashing paper and scattering paper everywhere in the underground, we will just read our paper, download the information, then fold the paper, put it in the pocket, and read it again in the next morning. That would be a nice undertaking that would save a lot of tree and ecology and whatever without wasting so much paper and recycling and everything again. Or, for example, what I like very much, I'm really waiting for it, is the customizable wireless tie, which I have seen in some prototypes. It's a tie with, well, of course, a wireless connection over there. You put your SIM card over here, and you can download your tie from a website, and automatically the tie prints the texture that you want for that morning. And you just have one tie, and but every day different. Or you can even do some viral experiment. For example, there are two people with wireless ties and a Bluetooth integrated. Oh, I like your tie. And you can download his tie on your tie. And, well, that does exist. It's called viral fashion. And that's it. So there are several applications where you may be laughing, but I think in 20 or 30 years, that would be the breakthrough application, and everybody would have a wireless tie with viral fashion and whatever. So that's for the future, of course, but you could be in it. I mean, you could contribute engineering those kind of solutions. So we've been talking about frame buffer and grids and the depth of each cell in the grid. This kind of reasoning, grids, cell, depth of bit, etc., is a kind of reasoning which is called raster. So every image which is built with little squares, well, pixels, as a base element, is called a raster image. A raster is, well, the computer graphics name for a grid. Okay? So everything which is built with this kind of system, a grid of pixels, is called raster, a raster image. Why raster is so important? Because all our devices so far are raster-based. Our monitors are raster-based. We don't have any other way at the moment to display images in a different way which is not discrete. By discrete I mean quantized in a grid. So, which is another way to say digital. You know the difference between analog and digital. Analog works in the domain of the continuous. So it's a signal which is physical, continuous. So like the image that we are seeing here, I'm seeing to you, I'm looking at you, and you're not made up of little squares. Okay? Why not? Because you're analog, you're not digital. So the video signal, so to speak, from you to me, it's actually a completely different matter. But when I'm dealing in the world of computer, you know already probably from different courses that you have this mismatch, this word mismatch from the analog world, which is the world of reality, of the real signal, and the only way that we have to process it, which is the digital way. The digital way is to quantize sample and quantize and reduce in bits the information. This is true for sound. You know that the sound is quantized in levels, and then every level is written as a bit. Then you have the problem of anti-aliasing, etc., and reproducing it. It is true for images. When you're taking a picture with a digital camera, your digital camera is actually a very nice analog to digital device. So it's taking an analog signal, which is the signal of the light incoming on your sensor, and is actually subdividing it into a grid. A grid which is the CCD sensor, which is taking cell-based values of light intensity of red, of green, and blue, which are written in a grid, in a raster, and then represented on a raster system. So we are working with raster because everything in this way of reasoning is digital, digitalized, sampled and subdivided in level of intensity, arranged into a grid. The frame buffer is the area of memory in your video card which contains the raster. Then, incidentally, I've talked already about bit depth and the number of cells that you have in the raster. That is your resolution or maximum resolution. So how many pixels is your device able to represent in the same time? That depends from the size of your raster memory. Okay. So, very roughly, if you want to have millions of colors in a 1024 by 768, then you need at least 16 megabytes, 32 megabytes of RAM in your video board. And the more pixels at the same time you need, the more memory you need to host all these bits. Okay, here you have a few numbers. You are probably aware of the fact that there are some standard combinations for raster sizes. So a raster size, the standard of raster size is 640 by 480 is a standard which is called VGA, Video Graphic Array. An array is a grid. Array is another name for grid. And VG is video graphics. So it's actually a grid for visualizing graphics. That was the first standard. Then you go on Super VGA, Extra VGA, then you have UX VGA, Ultra Extra VGA. So there are different standards. And to each label, you have a specific standard resolution for that. So that's raster graphics. I've already told about you. And then there is the other face of the world, because every coin has two sides. For every man, there's a woman. For every engineer, there's an architect. And for bitmap graphics, you have the other side, which is vector graphics, which is the other way to do graphics. Actually, vector graphics represent, instead of forming geometrical features by reducing them into a grid of pixels, it describes the objects, well, basically with mathematical data or mathematical objects. So, lines, rectangle, curves. Roughly speaking, it's the same difference about drawing or creating images with Photoshop or creating images with Illustrator. I don't know if you ever had a chance to work with those two software packages. But whereas Photoshop, well, asks you to work at pixel level, in Illustrator you're actually drawing lines, curves, circles. And how do you tell the difference between an image which is described as a raster and an image which is described in vector form? That with an image described as a raster, if you make a zoom in, zooming inside the image does not create new information, because that's the grid in which the data is organized. If you want to enlarge the image, the only thing that you can do is to enlarge the size of the base pixel. So that's the famous effect of getting the image more and more pixelized until you cannot understand anything of the feature of that image. Why is that? Because the image is already digitalized, corrupted. There is no information more than the fact that a specific color has been assigned to a specific cell in the grid. So when you are zooming in, what you're actually doing is making the pixels bigger. But you cannot add more information because you don't have it. Whereas, if you describe objects in vector form, what you're actually describing is lines, circles, points, vectors, distances. When you're zooming, okay, you're still viewing it as a raster, but that is only because the only way you have to view in today's system is a raster-based device, that is a monitor. But when you're zooming in, the software automatically recalculates all the information and all the grid because it has a source of fresh data. That is, it has a mathematical source. So it recalculates the raster for the new level of zooming. So the fact is that in a vector image, you can zoom, 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 and you will never see that squared effect. Why? Because every time the original data is always the creation data, that is the mathematical description of that image, is always present. And it is always used to recompute the visualization raster. Do you see what I mean? Did you ever come across a flash animation? This is actually rather common. There are some banners. If the banner is nice, made by a nice artist, it's a vector banner. You can download it with your flash player and you can zoom in. And you can see that the vector image never pixelates, never destroys. Because it's a vector image and the flash player is a vector visualizator, is a vector viewer. So it really gives you that kind of effect. So those are the two sides of the universe. Images which are in raster actually will never be able, they do not scale well. So if you start zooming in, you cannot add any more information. Vector-based images are always extremely precise because they start from a mathematical source. However, for example, if I'm taking a picture of this class, okay, it is very easy to create your bitmap equivalent because I have a camera with a nice sensor that does that. But creating a vector representation of your faces, of your expression, of the colors, that's much more difficult or next to impossible to have a real photographic or photoreal result, because drawing with vector graphic is a matter of defining curves, lines, points. So you actually would be required to draw with lines and curves so beautifully that you cannot tell the difference between a photograph and a drawing. And this is not always possible. There are very good illustrators, but people that draws very well, but always there is a difference between a vector drawing and a bitmap image. But both of them are two different kinds of graphics which are still in use today. They have their advantages and characteristics. Okay, this is the raster vector comparison that I've told you about. And let's introduce the topic of 3D graphics. One field of computer graphics that has evolved very rapidly in the last 10 years is three-dimensional graphics. Three-dimensional graphics combine the concepts of vector graphics and the concepts of raster graphics. Why? Because all the source data we call a 3D image, we call it a scene. A scene is something that has objects inside, and lights, and a viewer. That is something which is observing the scene. The viewer is important because in relation to the position of the viewer, your projection, that is the way you will visualize the 2D projection on your monitor, changes. Well, you can see it for yourself. I mean, here we have a 3D scene, and my eyes are a projection system. So I'm looking at that part of the scene, so I'm looking at you at this point. So it's important to know that me, the viewer, in this scene, I am in this position, and I'm oriented in this way. So all the polygons, all the information of this part of the scene, actually, I don't need it because it's outside my current field of view. So the idea of 3D graphics is that the scene can be described in vector form with coordinates. That we can approximate objects with polygons, which are small triangles. If my triangles are small enough, they can be put together very nicely to create a nice shape. Of course, the bigger the triangles are, the coarser, the worse the object, the shape will be. But the finer the triangles will be, the more precise, the finest the shape will be. Those collection of triangles making an object are called meshes, or one mesh. A mesh is a grid of polygons, triangles. All the meshes are disposed together to create the scene. The light sources as well are considered as objects, so they will have a position and some properties. And the viewer has a position, a size, and some characteristics that we will see. All this information together create the model of the scene. The model of the scene is the collection of information containing all the coordinates of polygons, material of each mesh, position and characteristic of the light source, and position and characteristic of the viewer. When I have all this information, I have created a model, a 3D model of my scene. Yes, your question? A mesh is a collection of polygons. The idea is that, I can represent, you probably have seen 3D objects from modeling software, yes? I can model very precisely this bottle by putting very little triangles all together. So I could, instead of putting color in the bottle, I could see its frame, its wireframe structure, and I could see all the triangles making it. That's the mesh of the bottle. That's the grid of triangles which compose the bottle. That's a mesh. With OpenGL, we can work at polygon level, well, at vertex level, which is the points. At polygon level, every polygon is composed of 3 vertices. At mesh level, a mesh level is composed by a set of polygons. At scene level, the scene is composed by a set of meshes. You can already see that there is a tree-like data structure here, with the polygons being the leaves, collected into triangles, collected into meshes, collected into a scene, or parts of a scene. So you already see a little bit of informatics here. Data structure sorting, data structure reading, traversal, organization, culling. So that's stuff for our teeth. Okay, but now I've been chatting a little bit, so it's time to show you what we can do with this strange idea that we can describe 3D scenes with geometry objects. And these objects are in reality just points and triangles. We can build on these concepts and get some results. So, voices from the series Voices from the Past, which is past students of this course, I can show you, for example, this project is called Clotilde. Clotilde is a simulator of virtual clothes. So it takes, well, it's actually a model of a spring mass particle system in which the parameters of the springs and of the masses are adjusted to simulate the behavior of specific textiles. So, well, I can run it and it gets it clear. So, so actually the spring mass model is in the center. There is a perturbance system, which is a wind, which is modeled as perturbating all the masses inside of the model. And the masses react to the wind, that is the perturbation, with a reaction which is given by their spring factor. No? Like little balls, imagine that the points are spheres, and the connection between the spheres are springs. So when you are picking one of the spheres, it actually gets into relation with all the other spheres with a spring-like interaction. If you adjust the spring behavior well enough, you can obtain a textile-like effect. There are a few equations that help you to do this. I don't know if I can zoom in. I don't know if you see it, but I activated the wireframe mode. Do you see it? And you can see that actually the flag is made of a very thick net of polygons. This is the mesh. I don't remember how to zoom in. I remember that there was a help online, but I don't remember now. Oh, yeah, sorry. Let's do it again. Here you can alter the spring mass parameter. More wind, less wind, more wind, more wind, a lot of wind. Okay. So not bad, eh? Then there is an improvement. You don't see the triangles because we put over the triangles an image. This image is called a texture. The texture is actually a bitmap image, so it's an image made of pixels. And there is a procedure which is called texture mapping. That is, every pixel or group of pixels in the grid is mapped or linked to one node of the mesh. One more node of the mesh. So when that node in the mesh moves, also the pixel moves. There are a few equations to make this mapping. Okay, I'm not going to explain it right now. There is a lot about texture mapping that we can see if we wish. But the effect is this, that you are calculating your movement on the mesh at polygon and vertex level. And then you perform texture mapping after you have moved the polygons. And the effect is this. It seems like a flag waving in the wind, calculating in real time. Because in real time I can say less wind, more wind, and see what's the effect. That's nice. Okay, that's an example of a project made by one student. This is really something very computer graphics-like. That is designing an algorithm to represent a spring mass system. Okay, it's very OpenGL-like. He studied the model, implemented the data structure. Okay, you see that it's not something very interesting. I mean, it's not, well, it's interesting scientifically, but I mean, hey boy, it's a flag moving in the wind. There's no art in that. It's just engineering, right? The interest is algorithmical. But you can play the violin in your heart in different ways. Like, for example, this group of students used a 3D modeler to create the model of a scene. So they created meshes for drawing objects. A character, a person, a bed, a room. So they created a geometrical representation of a scene, and then used a software which is called a 3D modeler and a renderer, which is a system to translate the 3D geometrical representation into raster visualization of that model to create a story, a 3D story, like the movies that we sometimes, or the cartoons that we sometimes see at television. So let's see if we have it here. The work is called Le Voleur Personnel, and it's actually a little animation inspired from a famous painting of René Magritte. So I will leave it to you to enjoy it. So maybe a few comments on it. Do you see it?
This is an offline rendering. This means that they have been specifying the mesh of all the objects here, for example, the glass, the furniture here, the brush over here, and over the geometry of the object, as you see, they have textured everything. Maybe I have to switch it off to so you can see it better. Okay. Then there is the little guy over here with the hat. Starting from this, they have programmed all the movement of the meshes, and then they have rendered, that is, created a bidimensional representation, frame by frame. Then you put the frame one after the other, and you get an animation. So that's the principle. Of course, you do not do this all by hand. You do this with the help of a software, like, for example, 3D Max, or Blender, or Maya. So you see they are modeling the various objects, the comb, the bed, the bar of soap. No, it's a bar of soap. I don't know. And now, the guy in the glass and the comb on the bed. You see that there is here transparency, for example, in this material. That is light shining through and lets you see towards the background. And here, for example, there is a mirror. And you can see in the mirror different effects given from the light. And you can see, for example, and this is the original painting by Magritte. Okay? This is the original painting, and they elaborated on it, creating a small story on how the things composed together to create this painting. So I think it's rather nice, no? This kind of technique requires you to compute offline every frame. That is, you get a geometrical representation, that is, all the meshes of the object, all the materials of the object, all the light sources. Then with this, you render frame by frame the result. Rendering for something like this takes, I don't know, from 3 to 6 hours. At the end, it depends from the resolution at which you are rendering. At the end, you have a movie and an animation that you can just play. You don't have any form of interaction with this. I mean, I cannot pick the guy and take it away from the glass, or I cannot pick the door of the furniture over there and open it and close it. I cannot do anything interactive, like, for example, you do in a video game. This is just an animation which is created via an offline rendering technique. Rendering is the technique that transforms the model, so the thing that you have made modeling, into something which is visualizable. That's rendering. That's, if you want, the rasterization process of your geometric model. The model is a vector model, but if you want to visualize it, you need to visualize it on a raster system, for example, the monitor. And this is why you have to rasterize it, transform it from geometrical information to a grid-based information, raster-based information. This rasterization process is called rendering.
the result of this here is the rendering of several frames created by moving step by step a group of meshes. A similar work, I can show it to you, is the job of a group of several years ago. I think it's 2002, it's written here. This is a job that a group made in 2002, so it's already 6 years ago. It's a similar technique, but I want to show it because there's a lot of work involved in it.
Sono passati più di 500 anni dalla demolizione di una imponente basilica cristiana che per più di 1000 anni ha accolto tra le sue mura i cittadini milanesi ed ha assistito ai loro riti. Nel corso di questi ultimi 5 secoli si sono persi importanti reperti, in epoca più recente a causa della guerra e successivamente con gli scavi della prima linea metropolitana milanese. Il più importante documento a noi giunto è la raccolta commentata ma incompleta dei rilevamenti effettuati dall'ingegner De Capitani d'Arzago durante gli scavi per la ricostruzione del rifugio antiaereo. Anche l'interessante tesi di Ada Grossi, riunendo conoscenze artistiche, sociali e architettoniche dell'epoca, ha permesso di poter disegnare un modello, di intraprendere un viaggio, di poter riaprire per voi le porte di Santa Tecla.
There was a reflection mirroring. Oh, they had a lot of problem with moving the camera here. I feel a little bit puking every time I see this. But already they did so many hours of rendering that I didn't have the heart. So there is the model of the church all in the outside, you see? Then you go inside. Pay particular attention to the lighting effects. I will point that to you. So not much yet. The birds are really a touch of... Look at this environmental light over there, you see? Light coming in from the windows. You really could see the dust. Then you have shadows here, you see? This is texture mapping on the floor, this is regular. Shadows over here projecting. The upwards also inside. Source lights here on the candles. Now we're going down to the bricks. Now we will enter in the baptistry. Pay attention to the ray of light coming inside the baptistry and reflecting on the water. Over here, you see this is ambient lighting, volumetric lighting it's called. because it really gives you the volume of the ray of light. Now we should enter the baptistry. So here it is. You have see water reflection, mirroring over here. All this geometry is mirrored inside the water. Volumetric ambient lighting over here. All shadows here, see? Light over here. Alla fine ti spara. C'è la scena di luce. Ok, that's basically it. Okay. You have seen a lot of effects, like for example, the water mirroring actually the geometries around. Those kinds of effects are possible because you really take some computational time to perform a technique of rendering which is called global rendering. In global rendering, you are able to utilize such algorithms that can compute the color of each part of the scene, taking into account the interaction of all the surrounding objects as a whole. This is why this kind of rendering is called global rendering. As you can understand, this needs to make complex calculations for each frame and for each pixel. So, as for now, it is not possible to obtain such kind of effects, even if we are starting to get near to that, in real time. To get photorealistic effects like this, you need a pre-processing and a pre-rendering, and you obtain an animation. So you just look at the animation, but you don't have any real-time rendering or interaction rendering, because this kind of effects require the interaction of all the objects, and this takes time. This is why this kind of rendering is also called offline rendering. That is, you render everything, and you see the result of your rendering. That's it. There is another kind of rendering, which is called online rendering, in which you render your geometry on the fly, on the spot, immediately. You do this very quickly, but of course you lack the photorealistic effects that you can get in offline rendering. Yes? I don't remember actually very well, but I know that they rendered for almost a week with 3 PCs. But back then it was 2002. So in 2002 we had much less memory, we had much less CPU power. Renderers also were different. So I don't say it was the prehistoric of computer graphics, but today we would render this much faster, for sure. But I specifically remember that I was complaining about the way the camera was moving, because you saw that it was actually, it feels like you are on the, well, some kind of park and going up and down, on the roller coaster, like this. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So I will really feel like, ugh, please correct those camera movements. But they explained me that it took a week just to make the demo. So in the end, they showed me the model and everything, and we agreed in not re-rendering it. But that also means that it's already 6 years that I'm doing the Santa Tecla roller coaster. And this project that I'm showing to you now, and that's the last one, it's an example of online rendering. It's a model created with a specific technique which is called VRML, or Virtual Reality Modeling Language. VRML allows you, well, the idea is a bit like HTML. What do you do in HTML? You put tags, and you say text, color, font. Okay, it's not used much more in that way anymore, but the idea is that you could describe the appearance of a web page. In VRML, the idea is the same. You use a node and tag-based language. I will show it to you how it looks like. I will open with a text editor to let you see that it is actually a text file, you see, readable. Proto pilone alto. Pilone alto means high pillar. Transform, translation, scale, children, shape, appearance, material of the high pillar, geometry, convex folds, the coordinates. Okay. They, of course, didn't type this by hand. They used a tool which allowed them to draw the shape, and then they exported the shape as a set of coordinates. You see, x, y, z, x, y, z, x, y, z, x, y, z, x, y, z. This is vertices that make together a mesh. VRML is a specific plugin which allows you to read the mesh and visualize it in real time. Now, this is a proto, and because it is a proto, you need an external file to load it. You cannot load it directly. Let's try auto. Okay, so you see, you can. It doesn't allow me to roll. Okay, stop. So you just describe the object and the texture, and you may notice that I am running this inside Internet Explorer. So there is a plugin for Explorer which actually downloads, instead of a HTML file, downloads a WRL file. So exactly like you download an HTML file and the browser draws the web page, in the same way you download a WRL, stands for Word, a Word file, and the browser shows you the 3D representation of this object. Plus, it gives you a few navigational buttons to navigate and explore the 3D object. Now, this is, of course, only a small piece of the whole project. To understand what it is, well, you need to load the whole file, which is actually putting all the small pieces together. Okay, this is not this one. I need l'uomo per Cortona. In VRML, you can specify, you see, textures, meshes, set of coordinates, sound sources, and way of movement inside the board, and interactions. So you see that you can actually move around it, and you can decide yourself where to go. This is completely different from the technique of offline rendering that we have seen before. We were on Santa Tecla roller coaster, and we couldn't get down. We had to go all the way at the end of the trip. Here, I can ride and go and explore whenever I want. But at what price? At the price that every step has to be re-rendered in real time. And you see that this depends a lot from the power and the possibility of your PC. And also, you can see that the photorealistic level of the scene is quite different from the level of yes, it's interesting for the first 5 seconds, but Okay. Disattiva. You also see that, well, the quality is a little bit of a compromise. I mean, it's good. It conveys a feeling of being there, especially if I actually do something like this. Let's see if it works. Turn. Especially, for example, I raise my head and look at the ceiling. See? So I can really explore how it is done. But look at a few fine points. Like, for example, look at the columns. Now, here the columns are rather nice. And you see that you have all the details here. But look at the columns in the background over here. Do you see? They are not actually as nice as the columns that you have here, near to you. This is another strategy that it is very often used in system of online rendering. Because since you have to do everything online, you have to do everything very quick, so you have to make choices, like everything in life. If you want speed, then you can't have accuracy. So what happens? That you have the best accuracy in the things that are nearest to the observer, and the least accuracy in the things that are far from the observer. Because chances were that you didn't notice that column until I explicitly pointed your attention to it, right? But look, when you're going near the column, I'm walking with my head like this, risking to fall down, but I will take this risk. Keep your eyes on this column, huh? You see? You see? It changes, but still is not as nice as this one in the front. It's an intermediate version of nicety. If I go on, it will transform again until it becomes, so to say, at the full detail. In the meantime, you see that I have collision detection. That is, I tried to go through the column, but I couldn't, so I had to step a little bit to the right to go on. This kind of effect is called collision detection. That is, the renderer has the information of how much I am fat, how much I am tall, and it tells me, no, you cannot because you are bouncing against the column. You have to move a little bit to go. This is called collision detection. And you see, it changed. This thing is called level of detail. That is, in many online rendering systems, you can define not one mesh, but for example, 3 meshes, and say, this is mesh for level of detail 1, when the viewer is very far. Then there is mesh for level of detail 2, when the viewer finds itself at an intermediate distance. And this is the mesh for level of detail 3. Of course, the mesh of level, the whole idea is level of detail 1 is much less complex than level of detail 3. Why? Because in that way, I have much less polygons to render in real time, making computation, well, faster and more usable. As you can see, I do not have shadows. There are no shadows over here. There are no ambiental lighting. There are no reflections. You see? Why there is not? Because those kind of computation would require a global approach. And a global approach would require scattering a lot of rays to trace to all the objects in the scene. And that would take a lot of time for each frame. Time that I don't have. So this kind of approach is actually rendering every object like it was the only object in the scene. So its rendering is taking into account, its rendering is done without taking into account all the other objects. That also could mean that if you, for example, had something very shiny, like a ball in the Christmas tree, a red ball in the Christmas tree, and another ball, if you're rendering online without global rendering, you don't see the reflection of one ball in the other, because there is no global rendering. There is no conception when one ball is rendered that there is another ball near it. Because every object in local rendering is considered as the unique single object in the scene. You see the effects here. Here everything is done in local rendering. That means that you don't have shadows because you are not breaking interaction between the objects and the light source. You don't have reflections because you don't take into account interaction between the reflections. You don't have mirrors because that would mean that the mirror object should have to take into account the viewer and the position of the other objects around in the mirror. You don't have anything of the sort. What you have in trade, you have the possibility to navigate around at your will, exploring. Like, for example, in a video game. And interacting. I didn't show you that there are a set of doors over here. Do you remember where's the exit? Look at another thing. You see that the background, in the end, is black. This is frustum culling. What is frustum culling? The system cuts away portion of the scene. Look at the column. Well, in this case, it's good because it seems a shadow. But it's actually culling which is taking place over here. That is, the system is cutting away portion. You see, this is not a shadow at all. It's cutting away portion of, look at the column over here, portion of the scene that are falling outside the current volume of visualization. Why does that? To save work, to save time. The reasoning here is, anyhow, these things are very far, so you are not interested in them. So I'm not drawing them. Yes? It depends from the rendering engine. In this case, I think that it does this is called occlusion test. Of course, that would be advisable because if you have an occlusion test, then you can determine that there are meshes in front of other meshes. That is between, like for example here, there are columns behind. So there is no point in rendering the mesh of this column behind in the whole, because anyhow I'm not seeing it. The point is, does it take more to perform the occlusion calculation or to render some polygons that anyhow you don't see? So it's really actually a matter of balancing. And it really depends on how your engine is designed and programmed. Most of engines actually do an occlusion check, but I would say rather crude. And we will see during the next lesson a very crude occlusion check that you can do very quickly with just one scalar product. So that's usually the occlusion check that you do that allows you to cull away polygons immediately at the price of just one computation. So you see that thanks for your question. It gave me the opportunity to explain something more. In addition, you see that the door appeared because that part of the mesh entered the viewing volume. And one thing that Vormal allows you to do is to have interaction with objects. So I will show it to you because it's nice. But of course you have to go a little bit nearer to the door. Let's see. No, not near enough. It crashed. Okay, I don't know why I can't move. Let's see. Let's fly. Wait. No, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. But anyway, the idea is that if you go near enough, this cursor becomes a star, which means that you can click. You can click and the doors open. And you can open and close the doors, and so you can do interaction, etc. So it's a nice thing. I mean, to do small things, interesting things very easily. Online rendering that is, techniques like this, are the same techniques that are used, for example, in video games, with effects which are increasingly better, because hardware is improving. So most of the calculations that we couldn't afford online now are done in hardware with the new graphical board. So the quality of online rendering is becoming better and better and better and better. You see, if you're following a little bit video games running on the new hardware have and quality and appearance which have nothing to do with the games of even 5 or 6 years ago. Okay, so that was online rendering. So more or less I managed to show everything. I'm rather happy. I closed probably my, let's take basic principles again. Fuck. Sorry, I have to log in again. Okay, so you see here that the idea in 3D graphics is the following. You do modeling, that is, you specify vertices, meshes, and you have a model, that is the representation of your world. Then there is a graphics pipeline, which is a bunch of tasks, of operations that you do on the geometry of the model. After you have done all these operations, you start rendering, that is, converting your model in the specific 2D projection needed for the specific frame at that moment. And then when you render the frame for that moment, you have the resulting image. As soon as something changes, for example, the position of the viewer, I moved myself one step further. Then you have to redo everything from scratch. You have to restart from the model, perform again the operation in the graphic pipeline, perform the rendering of the new frame. Okay? Every time that something changes in the representation of your model, which includes your viewer, the lights, and the geometries, the meshes. So if the viewer moves, that means that you have to recompute the frame, because the situation has changed. And it's clear why, because I'm moving inside the church. So all the position of the meshes has to be moved according to the new position of the viewer. Okay, we have seen the main elements of the scene, objects, lights, and viewer. So this is the conceptual scheme of the scene. Every scene, when you're considering a scene, you're considering light sources, the model, and the viewer. And once you have everything in place, you compute a frame projecting the scene onto an image plane. This projection, the result of this projection, is given by the current mutual position of the viewer and of the model. If you move the viewer or you move the model, then on the image plane, the projection is different. And it has to be recalculated. Right? That makes sense. Therefore, every time something changes in my scene, there are a few operations to be done. These operations are one after the other. They form a pipeline. That is a sequence of operations. Why is it called a pipeline? What's a pipeline? A pipeline is a sequence of operations which is able to continuously run each one of its stages. I mean that it works like this. You have probably a lot of vertices to process. because you have seen that a mesh is composed by a lot of nodes, a lot of vertices. And you have a lot of stages, operations to do. Transformations, projection, shading, rasterization. You take the first point, the first vertex, and then you do the operation. Transform, project, shade, rasterize. But do you have to wait for vertex number 1 to enter the sequence and finish the sequence before starting making the calculation on vertex number 2? Of course not. Every operation is a stage, and the sequence of stage is a pipeline. Pipeline means that vertex number 1 enters stage 1. When it is finished in stage 1, vertex number 1 go to stage number 2. At the same time, vertex number 2 enters stage 1. You see what I mean? That's a pipeline. So you keep feeding the pipeline in a way that every stage is always busy with calculation. That means that your lead time for one vertex remains the same, but your total throughput is greatly enhanced. That is the time that you need for every vertex to be processed by the pipeline. You see what I mean? That's evident, right? No. That's exactly how the pipeline works. Every vertex enters a stage of the pipeline, but every stage is always working until all the vertices are processed by the pipeline. What are the stages of the pipeline? Transformation. Transformation is moving the viewer or moving the object if there has been a mutual movement. For example, I've moved myself or I rotate myself. That means that coordinates of the vertices have to change somehow to represent the fact that there is a shift in my position, right? That's called transformation. I am moving all the local coordinates of the vertices. After that, I have to recalculate the projection of the object on the image plane. So that's projection. That is, I recalculate what will be the new coordinates in the 2D space of the image plane. That's projection. Then there is shading. I calculate what will be the color of each pixel on the image plane. And then there is rasterization. I, in fact, transform all this calculation into a set of pixels. This is the last step. Because when I transform everything in a set of pixels, what I have is a fixed grid of colors on which I cannot make any other mathematical processing, because I lost the object. After rasterization, I have just a bunch of pixels, all flattened together. So that's the last step. Okay. How do you feel? Tired? Okay, well, anyhow, we have a lot of time, and I say that as a first lecture, I would say it's enough. So if you agree, I will stop here. And you have the task of downloading all the slides of the lectures, my slides, not the ones of Raffaella's, because I think that Raffaella is going to make a few changes. So before downloading everything and printing everything, just print mine. Because mine, I know already I will not make any change. So you can download that and print that. So we will meet not next week, because next week you will meet with Raffaella in room 3.2 at the laboratory. We meet in 2 weeks. In the meantime, please add my contact to your messenger and write me, hello, I'm a student of Computer Graphics 2009. So I bring your contact in my folder of students of 2009. That will be useful to keep in touch. Thank you very much for your attention, and bye-bye.